Welcome to the Press Box. I'm Steve Mims, the Register Guard, along with Austin Meek. We begin to look ahead to the 2017 Oregon football season. I think the big topic that's come up in the last week or so is sort of Oregon in a post-Darren Carrington world and just what it means to the depth of the wide receivers. Starting off, Austin, just the loss of Carrington seems like a move that Willie Taggart had to make, but at the same time, it had to be a little tougher maybe just because of the impact it has on this year's team.
Yeah, I think to be consistent with everything he'd set up to this point, Willie Taggart had to do something decisive with Darren Carrington. I guess for a new coach coming in, there's two ways you could look at it. You could say he's got a clean slate. Anything that happened before I got here, I'm not concerned about. But I think it's clear that Willie Taggart looked at the track record with Darren Carrington. This was not the first incident with him. He had a history of this. And I think to be consistent with everything he'd said so far, Willie Taggart had to do that, had to dismiss Darren Carrington. But it does leave Oregon pretty thin depth-wise at the wide receiver position because aside from Charles Nelson, they really don't have anybody who's a proven performer at that position.
Yeah, I think if a month ago you'd have said, hey, who are the most important five guys for Willie's first season, that list would start with Justin Herbert. And number two, Darren Carrington's in the mix on that list. I mean, you could take him, Royce Freeman, Troy Dye, but there's no doubt that Darren Carrington, and if this was going to be the Darren Carrington season that you thought, eventually you thought he had in him maybe a 75-catch, 1,000-yard, 12-touchdown season. Could have been a huge difference for this team. Looking now, though, at what you got back, you got Charles Nelson's back, who's got a career 92 catches. You got 3 career catches beyond that. And Nelson doesn't bring the stretch the field type that Carrington did. The guys you think of that now might be Dylan Mitchell and Alex Ofadile, although Ofadile's been hurt a lot. It just leaves a real question to see who's going to fill in on kind of the two sides. Now, you kind of thought you had Carrington, Nelson in the middle, and you could fill in that other side. Now I think the whole depth chart of wide receiver becomes a question.
I think Dylan Mitchell becomes now one of the most important guys on this team. He's shown, mostly in spring games, the ability to be the same kind of big play threat that Darren Carrington was. He didn't show that a lot during the season last year as a freshman. He was banged up too at times. But I think he's got the natural ability to fill in that role, and they'll need him to do that. They really don't have a lot of guys when you look at that wide receiver depth chart who fit the prototype. Darren Carrington definitely did. He was big, he was fast, he had NFL ability. After that, it's really kind of a toss-up, but I do think Dylan Mitchell potentially could step into that role.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever had a receiver with 2 catches for 9 yards in his career who comes into the season with maybe so much weight on their shoulders, just because it seems like that's the name that everybody throws out right away. But there are some other options. And we talk Malik Levitt's a guy who's kind of gone between offense and defense. He steps in there. The interesting thing will be to see the freshman class. Willie's brought in 4 freshmen. There's Dawood Davis, Jalen Redd, Darian McNeil, who was here in the spring, and then Johnny Johnson. They're going to need some of those guys to emerge. And we've seen it before. We've seen Josh Huff, Charles Nelson, guys who played wide receiver as true freshmen. We saw Carrington and Devin Allen as redshirt freshmen. So, Oregon's relied on freshmen before, but I think these 4 true freshmen, we're now looking at the chance that maybe all of them play, and certainly 2 or 3 of them are probably going to have to contribute.
Yeah, you'd think McNeil is probably the best position to contribute early just because he was here in the spring. Mm-hmm. But he's not a big guy. To me, he looks like he's in the Charles Nelson mold. He looks like a slot receiver, a guy you could do a lot of different things with, but not somebody that you're going to put on the outside like you did Darren Carrington. I don't think he's somebody who would fill that role. The other guys, it's hard to say. It's hard to predict what you'll get from a freshman who's showing up on campus for the first time in the summer. But I think you're right. I think all those guys should go into it feeling like they have an opportunity to play. I don't know that Oregon's going to be in a position to really redshirt a lot of freshman receivers.
Yeah, because we talk about Carrington, but it really goes beyond that. If you look at Devin Allen, everybody would have thought, if he doesn't have the track success, this would have been his redshirt senior year. You got Tristan Wallace, who was, dismissed from campus. Jalen Brown decided to transfer as a graduate transfer for a junior year, which was strange. A couple years ago, Kirk Merritt transferred. Really what looked like a really deep group of wide receivers coming into this season, like I say, has gotten to the point where we've got 95 career catches from the group, and 92 of them came from one guy. So you can also look then over at tight end, but there's not much depth there. There's actually a lot of depth. I was looking at, I think there's 8 or 9 guys listed at tight end, but really it's Jacob Breland, maybe Cam McCormick coming up, but it's not like you're going to suddenly throw a couple tight ends out there and make some experience that way.
Yeah, I remember last year looking at this receiver group, the question was how are they going to find enough footballs to go around for all these guys? And in a very short amount of time, that depth chart has really, really changed. I wonder if Jaylen Brown looks at it now and thinks, man, I could have really been I could have been the star of that group if I'd stuck around. And you're right with the tight ends, that group losing Pharaoh Brown, it's not like there's an abundance of, players there who are proven, who can step in and take some of those catches that aren't going to the wide receivers. So I think that's going to be a big question, is who catches the passes this year from Justin Herbert? Do they maybe get some of the running backs more involved?
Yeah.
I think they've got a surplus of running backs. That's probably the deepest position on the team. So somebody like a Taj Griffin, is he more involved in the passing game? That could be one way to offset the some of the depth issues at receiver.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if Willie, maybe, he's run the ball a lot. He's coached at Stanford. He's had some offenses where it's been pretty run heavy, throwing the ball a lot. I almost wonder if he doesn't look now, and you've got your strength on offense is the depth on the offensive line, your depth at running back, and your starting quarterback who you can't get hurt. When you add those things up and you look at, a lack of depth receiver, I wonder if they almost run the ball more now. If they decide, hey, let's make sure we're not going to send Justin back to throw 30, 40 times, and if he gets hurt, and then suddenly we're down to Braxton Burmeister there. Let's keep him a little bit healthier. We can bring in, like you mentioned, Royce, Tony Brooks-James, Kenai Benoit, rotate these guys in. We've got a line that we feel like is pretty deep that we can rotate guys in to protect them. I almost wonder if and then also, with the defense, it's giving up a lot of points. Maybe we keep them off the field a little bit. I wonder if, and I think maybe some of this would have been in play before Carrington, if even more now, if maybe Oregon doesn't think, let's maybe lean a little bit more towards the run side of the ball, and let's see if we can use our advantage of the strength and the experience we've got on the line of running back, not have to go so much to the receivers, and maybe give our defense a rest.
Yeah, I think Willie probably, if he had his choice, that's how he'd want to play anyway. If you look at his South Florida team, Marlon Mack, the running back, Quentin Flowers, the quarterback, that's what they wanted to do last year. They wanted to run the ball at you. So I think if Willie had his choice, that's probably how he'd like to play. And now I think it's kind of how they have to play. It just fits the personnel of the team.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in to our 2017 debut of the Press Box. Check back in later in the week. We're going to kind of go through Oregon's schedule, look and see how that thing sets up for them. And next week, the vacationing Ryan Thorburn will rejoin us, and we'll take a look ahead to Media Day, Pac-12 Media Day next week, as the season is slowly within a week and a half of getting started. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later in the week.